This Shabbat falls between Tisha B'Av, or Tisha B'Av, and Tu B'Av. What is Av? I'm so glad you asked. It is the Jewish month that falls at this time in the summer. And Tisha B'Av, which was commemorated this last week, is a day where Jews remember the destruction of the Second Temple, the destruction of the First Temple, the expulsion from Spain, as well as the liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto. It's a day where we experience sort of communal mourning and communal trauma, and we fast and we sit on the floor and we recite kinot, which are these poems, liturgical poems, and we read from Eicha, or Lamentations, which is a book in the Tanakh that laments and really is experiencing all of this tragedy. We didn't do that here, though, right? Right. Reform Jews, to a certain degree, we're between embracing and not embracing Tisha B'Av because, A, the destruction of the temples happened a long time ago. Second of all, if the destruction of the temples hadn't happened, we wouldn't have Rabbinic Judaism. We would still be doing sacrifices, and we wouldn't have Reform Judaism. And so it's a very kind of strange thing to mourn something that, had it not happened, we wouldn't be where we are. We wouldn't have made sort of some progress. Not to say that we're happy that it happened and all the people who died and all of the tragedy ensued, not all of that. But we're at a point where maybe we don't need to sit on the floor and ask why God has forsaken us and try and figure out what we did wrong and all of those sorts of things. However, there are liberal Jews who have embraced Tisha B'Av, if for no other reason than it brings us an opportunity to practice sort of communal mourning. What does it mean for us as a community to be sad, to mourn? What do our mourning practices look like? And so sometimes that is a reason why we might participate in the traditional Tisha B'Av observance. Okay. Tu B'Av, if Tisha B'Av is on the 9th of Av, right? Tisha, 9. Then we go to Tu B'Av, which is actually the 15th of Av. If you're speaking modern Hebrew, Chameshesre is 15, but Tu, the letters Tet and Vav together, the numerical value ends up being 15. Tu B'Av is a day of love. It is a day where upon, again, in the temple times, women would have gone looking for suitors and that sort of thing. And so it's kind of like a Jewish Valentine's Day, or at least it has been embraced that way by the modern Jewish community. And so we're in this interesting and strange tension this week between mourning and love and all of this deep, deep emotion. And both of them are really holidays that we as a community don't observe fully. I think it's important that we recognize the tradition, and I think it's important that we understand why we have done these things, but I don't know that either of these holidays necessarily speaks to where we are as a modern society and a modern community. So what do we do instead? We pay attention. Maybe if you want to read a little bit of Eicha, a little bit of Lamentations and understand what's going on, or the poetry of the Kinot, I think that's a really interesting thing. If we want to think about what is love from the context of the Jewish world rather than Saint Valentine, or rather than an American concept of, like, I don't know, love at first sight, or I don't know, all sorts of other, I think of the Christian interpretations of things like agape, and, there's love between God and people, and love between people and people, and love between friends. But Jewishly, what does it mean to love? I would argue that Jewishly what it means to love is to find yourself in a position of obligation, that you voluntarily put yourself in that position to do things for and to consider another entity fully without an expectation of reward. And I'm going to talk more about that at Shabbat services, which I hope you'll join me for. But in the meantime, I hope you have a week full of consideration and depth, full of feeling, and also, as Shabbat comes upon us, a little bit of rest.